Imagine a world where looking up at the night sky was like peering into a magical realm, where the stars were just tiny, twinkling dots, and the moon was a smooth, perfect sphere. Now picture a man named Galileo Galilei, who, in the early 17th century, turned this world upside down with a simple, yet revolutionary device, the telescope. This wasn't just any piece of glass. It was a gateway to a universe that had previously been hidden from human eyes. But the story of Galileo and his telescope is not just about scientific discovery. It's a tale of controversy, courage, and the relentless pursuit of truth. Galileo Galilei was born in Pisa, Italy, in 1564. From a young age, he showed a keen interest in science and mathematics. He was a curious soul, always questioning the world around him. In 1609, he heard about a new invention called the telescope, which had been created by Dutch spectacle makers. Intrigued, Galileo decided to build his own. He didn't just copy the design, he improved it, making a telescope that could magnify objects up to 20 times their original size. This was a significant leap from the original Dutch version, which could only magnify objects by about 3 times. Armed with his new invention, Galileo turned his eyes to the night sky. What he saw was nothing short of astonishing. He observed that the moon, far from being a smooth, perfect sphere, was actually covered in craters and mountains. He saw that Jupiter had 4 moons orbiting around it, which he named the Galilean moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. He discovered that the Milky Way, which had always appeared as a band of light, was actually composed of countless individual stars. And he observed that Venus, like the moon, went through phases, just like the moon, which supported the idea that it orbited the sun. These discoveries were groundbreaking. They challenged the long-held belief that the Earth was the center of the universe, a theory known as geocentrism. This belief was deeply rooted in both science and religion, and it was supported by the Church. The Church taught that the Earth was the center of the universe, and that the sun, moon, and stars revolved around it. Galileo's observations suggested a different view, the heliocentric model, where the Earth and other planets revolve around the sun. Galileo's findings were met with a mixture of awe and skepticism. Some people were fascinated by his discoveries and eager to see the universe through his telescope. Others, particularly those in the Church, were deeply disturbed. The Church had a lot invested in the geocentric model, both intellectually and theologically. If Galileo was right, it would mean that the Church's view of the universe was wrong, and this could undermine its authority. Despite the risks, Galileo continued his work. In 1610, he published a book called The Starry Messenger, which detailed his observations. The book was a sensation. It was written in Italian, the language of the people, rather than Latin, the language of scholars. This made it accessible to a wider audience, and it sparked a public interest in astronomy that had never been seen before. Galileo's success brought him to the attention of the Church. In 1611, he was invited to Rome, where he was received by Pope Paul V and the Jesuit fathers at the Collegio Romano. The Jesuits, who were known for their scientific and theological expertise, were intrigued by Galileo's findings but cautious about accepting them. They allowed Galileo to demonstrate his telescope, and many were impressed by what they saw. However, they still clung to the geocentric model, arguing that it was supported by the Bible and the teachings of the Church. Galileo, however, was not deterred. He believed that the truth could not be denied, and he continued to argue for the heliocentric model. He wrote letters and gave lectures, trying to persuade people of the validity of his findings. He even wrote a book called Letter to the Grand Duchess Christina, in which he argued that the Bible should be interpreted in a way that allowed for scientific discoveries. He believed that both the Bible and nature were God's creations, and that they could not contradict each other. But the Church was not convinced. In 1616, the Inquisition, a powerful religious tribunal, declared the heliocentric model to be heretical. Galileo was summoned to Rome and ordered to abandon his support for the heliocentric model. He was not punished, but he was told that if he continued to teach or write about it, he would face severe consequences. For a while, Galileo stayed silent, but his curiosity and passion for science could not be suppressed. In 1624, he went to Rome again, this time to meet the new pope, Urban VIII. Pope Urban was initially sympathetic to Galileo and allowed him to write a book comparing the geocentric and heliocentric models. However, the book, Dialogue on the Two Chief World Systems, was not what the Pope had in mind. It was a persuasive argument for the heliocentric model, and it caused a storm of controversy. The Church was outraged. Galileo was accused of heresy and was summoned to Rome to stand trial before the Inquisition. Despite his poor health, he was forced to make the journey to Rome in the winter of 1633. The trial was a farce. Galileo was threatened with torture and was forced to recant his beliefs. He was found guilty of heresy and was placed under house arrest for the rest of his life. Galileo's trial and punishment were a tragedy, but they did not silence him. Even under house arrest, he continued to work on science. He wrote a book called Two New Sciences, which laid the foundation for the study of mechanics and the strength of materials. This work influenced later scientists like Isaac Newton, and helped pave the way for the development of modern physics. Galileo's story is a powerful reminder of the importance of scientific inquiry, and the courage it takes to challenge established beliefs. He was not just a scientist, he was a revolutionary. His discoveries changed the way we understand the universe, and his legacy continues to inspire scientists and thinkers around the world. While Galileo's story is well known, there were other scientists of his time who made equally important contributions to the world of science, but their names are not as familiar. One such scientist is Robert Hooke. Hooke was an English scientist who lived in the 17th century, around the same time as Galileo. While Galileo was looking up at the stars, Hooke was looking down at the tiny world of the microscope. The microscope, like the telescope, was a product of the same age. It was invented by an unknown Dutch spectacle maker, possibly Zacharias Janssen, and it allowed people to see things that were too small to be seen with the naked eye. Hooke was one of the first scientists to use the microscope to study the natural world. He used it to observe everything from insects to plants, and he made some remarkable discoveries. One of Hooke's most famous discoveries was the cell. He observed a thin slice of cork under a microscope and noticed that it was made up of tiny box-like structures. He called these structures cells, a term that is still used today. Hooke's discovery of the cell was a crucial step in the development of biology, and it opened up a whole new world of scientific inquiry. Another important scientist who worked with microscopes was Antonie van Leeuwenhoek. Leeuwenhoek was a Dutch tradesman who had no formal scientific training, but he had a keen interest in science. He built his own microscopes, which were much more powerful than the ones Hooke used. With his microscopes, Leeuwenhoek discovered a world of tiny organisms that no one had ever seen before. He observed bacteria, protozoa, and other microorganisms, and he described them in great detail. His discoveries were so significant that he is often called the father of microbiology. While Galileo, Hooke, and Leeuwenhoek were making groundbreaking discoveries, they were also challenging the established order of their time. Galileo's work challenged the religious authority of the Church, while Hooke and Leeuwenhoek's work challenged the prevailing scientific understanding of the natural world. Their discoveries showed that the world was far more complex and mysterious than anyone had previously imagined. The stories of these scientists are a testament to the power of human curiosity and the importance of scientific inquiry. They remind us that the pursuit of knowledge is not just about making new discoveries, it is also about challenging the status quo and pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible. Galileo, Hooke, and Leeuwenhoek were all brave enough to look at the world in a new way, and their courage and determination have left an indelible mark on the history of science. Today, we live in a world where telescopes and microscopes are commonplace, and we take for granted the knowledge that these early scientists uncovered. But we should not forget the sacrifices they made and the challenges they faced. Their stories are a reminder that the path to scientific discovery is not always easy, but it is always worth taking. Whether we are looking up at the stars or down at the microscopic world, the quest for knowledge is a journey that has the power to transform our understanding of the universe and our place in it.